Carnage, the surprise new release from Nick Cave and his longtime collaborator in the Bad Seeds, Warren Ellis, is their first time as a duo releasing an album that's not just a film soundtrack. It's been entirely written and recorded since lockdown, and it's one of the first albums I've heard that really grabs the bull by the horns and tackles lockdown and this general state of malaise directly. Carnage feels very much like a product of 2020. It sonically and lyrically captures the multifaceted turbulence of that year, the political instability, the loneliness, the isolation, the continuing sense of unease. And I have to agree with Nick, who said before this album's release on the Red Hand Files website that this album is a brutal but very beautiful record embedded in a communal catastrophe. Whilst Nick Cave's albums since his reinvigoration with Push the Sky Away have moved musically towards the ethereal over the direct, to the abstract over the obvious, with albums like Skeleton Tree, a superb dark electronic inspired album, and Ghosteen, a lushly ambitious, crushingly ethereal nightmare coming from a place of profound grief. They were tragic, somewhat low-key albums, processing the death of his young son and coming to terms with grief. And Carnage, in some ways, is like a continuation of that grief process, but instead of focusing on the personal, it universalizes and abstracts it. Carnage is instead about the collective grief of a world where the illusion of free will has been shattered, and we suddenly all became prisoners in our own home, locked away by pestilence and disease. And it reminds me of a passage in Albert Camus' classic novel, The Plague, that pestilence is that which rules out any futures, cancels journeys, silences the exchange of views, and they, the townsfolk, fancied themselves free, and no one will ever be free so long as there are pestilences. Cave runs with this feeling of a lack of freedom. He plays with the atemporal feeling of lockdown in the title track, Carnage. In one moment he's saying goodbye and rolling through the mountains in the great outdoors, and another he's a barefoot child watching in the rain before he's brought into the present, sitting on the balcony in his house. The balcony, a constant reminder through the album of the lockdown jitters as he longs to tour again. And musically on this piece, the title track Carnage, Warren Ellis's arrangement feels static. The odd violin and backing vocals poking through the malaise and providing just a gentle lift to Nick's refrain of "It's only love with a little bit of rain, and I hope to see you again." And it's a really beautiful, effective and soulful refrain sung with such heart and emotion. Restlessness is certainly a theme which really fuels a lot of this album. It's beautifully captured by Nick in a couple of songs, especially the track Albuquerque. Synths begin to swell as the piano notes gently trickle in. It could almost be the start of a Sigur Rós tune from the Untitled record, but Nick's soulful baritone drifts the song away from that feeling, as it features two lovers who won't get to Amsterdam or that lake in Africa any time this year, the pestilence cancelling journeys and ruling out futures. Strings swell and it feels dreamlike, especially as the lyric, "And we won't get to anywhere, baby, unless you take me there," that Nick's saying that only with imagination and love can we get anywhere in this state. And whilst it could be argued that Albuquerque and Carnage, that we've talked about so far, might be slow, sappier songs to a degree, a natural continuation of Ghosteen, this album features some of Cave's most visceral work since Grinderman, and probably his most political song, at least that I can think of, the centerpiece, White Elephant. White Elephant is such a brilliant song. It really is the centerpiece of this whole album. It's what really brings it together. A beat drones and a bass pulsate as Nick lyrically frames recent political movements such as Black Lives Matter with the lyrics of a protester kneeling on the neck of a statue and the protester saying, "Now you know how it feels." These lyrics just feel sharp and incisive. In some ways, that "Now you know how it feels" almost reminds me of Dylan's Like a Rolling Stone. And then Nick moves to taking on the character of a a kind of Trump-like figure who's reluctant to give up power in this changing world, with this metaphor of a white man sitting on his porch with an elephant gun and his tears. The elephant gun, a clear symbol of colonialism, and the tears of a class who know little of oppression, but are screaming like they are oppressed because statues of racists are being toppled, whilst the white man with the elephant gun will just shoot you for fun. He will shoot you for free if you so much as look at him. I think here Nick Cave really wonderfully channels that feeling of a dying breeze desperately trying to cling on to power in the process of evaporation and becoming just a great grey cloud of wrath, as he phrases it. But what's really special about this song is after the political angst and turmoil and unease, the song suddenly kicks out of all the violence and chaos. The sky opens up and the song begins to shift. The drums kick in and Nick and a gospel choir sing about a kingdom in the sky. It's a complete tonal shift and a massive 180, as if Nick felt in his older age that he needs to balance out a tale of violence with a message of positivity and optimism. And whilst it can seem on the surface that this message of a kingdom in the sky is only applicable to believers, I do think that there's something more abstract in the concept that we can take from this. Because the kingdom in the sky is a really important recurring motif. It appears on about 3 of the 8 songs presented here, and I think it's something a bit more tangible than just a metaphysical heavenly state. I think he's using this metaphor as a general feeling of hope. At least to me as a non-believer, the spiritual inflections in the music and words are more symbolic of a greater state of joy that we can aspire to, not in the next life, but simply in this one. And I think it's just a truly stunning piece of music, this one, which I would highly, highly recommend to anyone. And whilst I focused on Cave a lot, Warren Ellis delivers some just superb instrumentation across this album in soundtracking Cave's apocalyptic yet hopeful visions, such as in Old Time, the second track, which has these almost Old Testament biblically kind of verses with dark brooding loops accentuating Cave's vocals. The music swirls around and it's so cinematic in nature. Every scene, every moment just vividly comes alive with Ellis's arrangements, and I think it's some of Cave's generally darkest work since Murder Ballads, perhaps. Darkest, I mean, of course you can say that Ghosty and the Skeleton are very dark albums, but in a very different way. This is maybe some of his most violent and energetic work since Murder Ballads, at least with the Bad Seeds, or just Warren Ellis in this case. And my only wish with this brilliant album is that there were a few more of these harder edged songs. They're just so good. The album ends with really the only song I think could close it, Balcony Man, a piano-driven song written almost like a dialogue with the old American film dancer Fred Astaire. Nick sings, "What am I to think on this balcony, Fred, where everything is amazing that stays in bed. I'm a 200-pound octopus under a sheet." And it's really a tune that exemplifies the restlessness as he wants to move about. He wants to get on stage and perform, but instead ends up just being this balcony man. And that's really the place where I think this album comes from. Him as the balcony man, where everything is ordinary until it is not. But then this feeling is counterbalanced with the most gorgeous refrain of "This morning is amazing and so are you in the morning sun." And that's what's so great about Carnage. It cuts through the apocalyptic nature of these current times as Cave seems to find hope and joy in small places, whether that be the grand notions, the kingdom in the sky, or whether it's just being stuck in, and at least the morning sun is amazing, and so are you. Before ending with a wonderful lockdown epitaph of "You are languid and lovely and lazy, and what doesn't kill you just makes you crazy." I really highly recommend this album. It's definitely an early contender for Album of the Year, and it's a really wonderful journey. Definitely not what I was expecting, and it's a bit more accessible in some ways than Ghosty and maybe even Skeleton Tree. And even if you weren't the biggest fan of those albums, I'd still recommend giving this one a go if at least you're a fan of some of Nick Cave's older works, with Murder Ballads or Boatman Calls or something. It's a really, really great album. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed my look at Nick Cave and Warren Ellis's Carnage. Do definitely check it out on streaming services, because the CD and vinyl doesn't come out until I think May. And yeah, until then, thanks for watching. Comment, rate, subscribe, hit the bell icon, and long live rock and roll.